The German Chancellor has warned Russia not to use a new pipeline as a potential weapon. The Nord Stream 2 is near completion. It'll bring more gas from Russia to Germany, but will this give Moscow too much power over Europe and its future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Seeker. The politics of energy are back under the spotlight in Europe. A new natural gas pipeline that would double the supply Russia sends to Germany is nearly complete. But the Nord Stream 2 pipeline avoids Ukraine, which is where a large portion of Russian natural gas passes through, before making its way to Europe. This means the Ukrainian government could lose a huge portion of the income it earns through transit fees. The United States and some EU member states are also concerned. They say further reliance on Russia for Europe's energy needs could be risky. But Germany's outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel says there will be rules in place to protect Ukraine's security.
We have made it clear that we will seek further sanctions within the European framework if the suspicion that the pipeline is being used as a weapon is confirmed. And we have made it clear that we, as well as Graf Waldersee, who will be our special envoy, are starting negotiations about the possibility of extending the contract from 2024 so Ukraine can have security on this level as well.
I still believe that this is a weapon. I still believe that it is impossible to ignore that this is a threat not only for Ukraine, but also for Europe. I don't think it's possible to ignore that it's a weapon. Ukraine will not talk about Nord Stream 2 from the economic point of view. You can see who controls gas prices in Europe now and how they're rising.
We are willing to continue transiting gas through Ukraine even after 2024, but we must understand in what time frame and in what quantities. For this, we must receive an answer from our European partners. How long are they willing to continue buying from us? This is an obvious thing. We can't sign a transit contract if we don't have a contract for delivery to our customers in Europe. Taking in mind the green agenda that is already being realized in Europe, we are asking ourselves, will our gas even be bought?
We'll bring in our guests in a moment, but first let's take a closer look at this project. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline runs under the Baltic Sea alongside an already existing pipeline completed in 2011. Both pipelines allow Russia to avoid Ukraine when supplying gas to Europe. The new pipeline is expected to transport nearly 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas every year, doubling Russia's current supply to Germany. The European Union already imports about 40% of all its natural gas from Russia. That's why there are growing fears that the new pipeline could increase the EU's dependence on Russia. So let's bring in our guests now. In Moscow, we have Pavel Felgehhauer. He is a Russian foreign policy analyst and columnist at Novaya Gazeta. In Sydney, British Columbia, we have Michael Bociurkiw, author and global affairs analyst. He's also the former spokesman for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And in Berlin, Thornike Gordadze, senior fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Good to have you all with us, gentlemen. Thornike, if I could start with you. Ukraine fears for its security on the basis that this gas pipeline will tighten Moscow's grip over the region's energy supply and strengthen its influence. Are those fears well-founded?
Yes, I think these fears are well-founded because Moscow has a long tradition of using energy and especially gas supplies as a political or geopolitical tool. We have seen it in previous decades concerning Ukraine, but not only Ukraine. Most of Central European or Eastern European countries have faced Russian policies regarding the energy supply. So this is a matter of geopolitics. Most of European countries, and including the European Union, which is also important, Brussels also considers that the new pipeline, Nord Stream 2, is a political tool in the hands of Russia. And basically only Germany's official position is that these political pressures can be avoided. But most of the countries, including those who are in the neighborhood, I mean Poland, Baltic states, Scandinavian countries, and the European Union, as I said, and even France. Usually France is not very aggressively anti-Russian, but regarding this particular project, most of the countries are against it and consider that it will increase Russia's geopolitical role in the European continent. And I'm not talking about the US. Maybe we'll come later to when we'll discuss the American position on this issue.
Sure, we will get to that at some point. Michael Bociurkiw, is Europe risking becoming too dependent on Russian gas?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the outlines of this so-called agreement is very vague. What does actually constitute an energy weapon, and when are sanctions triggered? So, for example, if Russia does abruptly raise gas prices to Europe or constrict supply, does that constitute using the pipeline as an energy weapon? I think Ukraine is very right now to feel very kind of threatened and vulnerable, because there's no real consensus on how these sanctions, can be triggered. And I think it's really incumbent upon people like Chancellor Merkel, before she leaves office, to tighten this agreement up. As the previous guest indicated, Russia has a long record in terms of, aggression, in terms of probing weaknesses, in terms of finding out how it can leverage its geopolitical advantage, its energy, to harm others and to, gain its own objectives. So it doesn't look good on all sides. I think, just quickly, I think that Ukraine feels very vulnerable and very alone right now, because it feels it doesn't have strong backing from Europe any longer.
Well, let's get Pavel Felgehhauer's take on this. A lot of fears being expressed here about this perceived overdependence on Russian energy and Russia using that as a weapon. What do you say to that?
Well, Europe is indeed very much dependent and increasingly dependent on Russian natural gas. Right now, we are kind of Russia's present, before, even without the Nord Stream 2 going operational, is flexing its muscles. Say Russia right now is cut the physical supply of gas to Europe, and to cover its contract obligations is extracting gas from underground reservoirs in Europe. And so that means that in formal terms, Russia is complying with its contracts, long-term contracts, Gazprom is. But in real terms, that means that summer's ending, winter is coming, and the European gas reservoirs that are used as a buffer during the cold winter are right now very much depleted, and apparently even physically it won't be possible to fill them up before winter comes. And so as a result, the spot price of gas in Europe has skyrocketed almost to the levels of East Asia. And Europe is not getting enough liquefied gas on tankers, because most of it is going to the East Asia, where there's the so-called East Asian premium on price. So Russia is flexing its muscles and showing that it can regulate the price of gas, the price of the supply of gas in Europe. Though it has just over a third of the supply is Russian, still anyway. So and with the new pipelines, Russia will have more flexibility in doing that.
Thornike, what's at stake here for the United States and their position on all of this?
The United States were very critical about this project from the very beginning. Even if the position of the previous American president, Donald Trump, was not always consistent, he was criticizing the project, but at the same time he tried to veto the Congress resolution to augment pressure on the project. The Americans were against the Nord Stream 2 also because at least for the President Trump, it was illogical to for Germany and for Europeans to claim at the same time that Russia was threatening them militarily, politically, and at the same time providing money for Gazprom, which, as we know, is a main resource provider for the Russian budget. And maybe in the specific case of the President Trump, it was also to help American companies that are exporting liquefied gas to augment their exportations to Europe. But the things have changed. We saw last summer the meetings between the President Biden and the Chancellor Merkel, and later meeting of Joseph Biden with Vladimir Putin in Geneva. And the Americans decided to waive the most of sanctions and the punitive measures that the United States have adopted against the companies who are involved in the construction of Nord Stream 2. And the Americans justify this change by the fact that the United States wants better relations with Europeans, and the major player in Europe is Germany. And at the same time, they tried to manage and to explain this decision, saying that together Germany and the United States will increase pressure, will establish sanctions if Russia uses Nord Stream as a geopolitical tool. As my colleague from Canada said, this is something very difficult to assess because, of course, Russia is a champion of hybrid measures, and who will determine when the political aspect intervenes in this issue? Who will, unless Russia invites directly with their tanks or military forces Ukraine or Eastern European countries, there could be always be a debate about is it political, is it geopolitical or not. So this is something that doesn't really give the credit to the both heads of governments and state when they claim that Russia will pay the price if they use it geopolitically.
Let's get Pavel's reaction to some of that. And what is at stake here essentially for Russia beyond the economic benefits?
Well, it should be understood that Nord Stream 2 is only one pipeline in a network of pipelines built by Russia. There's the Nord Stream 1, the very first pipeline, which is fully operational for a long time. And then there's the pipeline built to Turkey and from Turkey into the Balkans. The south kind of route, now it's called the Turkish route. So this is an entire network. Russia invested a lot of money into it. I mean, not only the pipelines themselves underwater, but also the infrastructure to bring the gas from Siberia to the Black Sea, to the Baltic Sea, and then send it to Europe through the north and through the south. And this is a massive investment, most likely. It was hoped that there would be foreign finances involved, but because of sanctions, they were not. So Russia paid, Gazprom paid out of his own pocket to build it. And this investment, at least on paper, will never be returned because it's going to be Gazprom pipes with Gazprom gas inside them. So they're kind of paying the transit fee to themselves. And as a result, they're paying very low fees to say that this is much more great economy. But the thing is that with such fees, they'll never return the investment. So this is, of course, a combination of political and commercial interests, like it often happens in today's Russia. Russia has both. It wants to be in some control of the European market, or at least on pricing there and supplies. But of course, also Gazprom is tied to the European market. Gazprom does not really produce on its own much at all. Liquefied gas, that means it can't send it to other places. It's pipelines, and they're tied to Europe. So Europe is tied to Russia, Russia is tied to Europe. Basically, for Moscow, that's also not that bad because there's this old idea that Russia should build bridges with Europe, try and push the Americans out, do something that Trump wanted to do, and establish kind of a Germany primarily, but with also other European countries as kind of very close partnership. That's not very working out, but there's the commercial part of it. And there's, of course, the problem of Ukraine, which right now finds itself in a position when Moscow, at will, if it wishes to, can continue to supply gas to Europe, fulfill its contract obligations, but not sending much or at all through Ukraine. And that's... Yes.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit more about Ukraine's options here. Michael Bociurkiw, if Ukraine continues to feel that Europe and the United States are not looking out for them on this issue, does that risk drawing them closer to China's orbit, as has been suggested by some?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the feeling in Ukraine is, I've recently returned from there, is that it's been thrown under the bus. The Biden administration, which, by the way, has very few foreign policy wins, has chosen to improve relations with Germany. It has chosen to do some kind of reset with relations with Russia. And in return, as I said earlier, Ukraine feels very vulnerable. It doesn't have many options, but yes, one of them is actually improving relations with China. In fact, President Zelensky recently had his first conversation with Xi Jinping over the telephone, and there was a very good call from both sides. And Zelensky said that pretty much to the effect that Ukraine has no better friend than China right now, at least an economic partner. And I think this was done in part to kind of put pressure on Washington to look again at relations with Ukraine and to help it more. Look, the other thing I have to say, Hazam, is that with the debacle in Kabul and with the United States now seen as not a credible partner to guarantee security, whether you're at Taiwan or Ukraine or whoever, is that, a lot of these countries are reevaluating those security guarantees and looking for other partnerships. And, Ukraine might even be looking, for example, even more to the Gulf countries to see what kind of new ties can be formed there. If I could say one other thing here, and this goes more to the kind of technicalities of the pipelines, is that the other problem Ukraine has, and it's not talked about very much at the moment, is with this realignment of gas transit, gas pressure in Ukraine has the potential to fall very, very much. So what that means practically during the wintertime, outlying oblasts or outlying villages may not get the required gas that it needs because it's really upset. It has the potential to upset the whole infrastructure there. So a lot of different vulnerabilities that Ukraine feels right now. So we shouldn't be surprised that it's looking elsewhere for better partnerships.
Thornike, what's your view on that? And this idea that America's credibility has taken a real hit in recent days, because Michael mentioned Afghanistan and their position with this now. Would that force the European partners to kind of look elsewhere to shore up their own alliances?
Yes, unfortunately, the U.S. role and even credibility is suffering already for several years. It has started earlier than just a few weeks or a few days ago. We also remember the first attempt of reset between the American administration, Obama administration, and Putin's Russia just after the war in Georgia. And there were numerous attempts of normalization of relations between the U.S. and Russia, always coming from the Americans. We also remember this disastrous experience in Syria, where the Americans abandoned their own red lines and allowed Russia to intervene on the sides of the president Bashar al-Assad, and all the tragic consequences that happened there. So many Eastern Europeans, especially, are very vulnerable because of their geographical proximity with Russia, are extremely worried. And to come back to the options that Ukraine has, I would add also another option that is now improving and getting closer relations with Turkey, which is and the cooperation between Ukraine and Turkey around the Black Sea, including cooperation in military field and military industry between these two countries. Don't forget that Turkey was quite critical about the Crimea's annexation by Russia, because Crimea, primarily the local population, the autochthonous population, is Turkic-speaking population. So these countries are looking for options. Somehow Ukraine tried to negotiate better options about NATO memberships in terms of with Germany. Again, Germany and France were the main countries blocking Ukraine and Georgia's accession to NATO from 2008. So the Ukrainians tried to negotiate this Nord Stream 2 issue with their possible rapprochement with NATO, but I don't see any serious changes in this issue. So yeah, of course, these countries increasingly they understand that they have to rely on their own resources and to be more multivectoral and to see partners everywhere, and also to improve relations between them, between these Eastern European countries, with Poland, with Baltic states, etc., etc.
Pavel Felgehhauer, I want to ask you about another announcement that was made in these meetings, and that was Angela Merkel promising to provide more than $1 billion to help expand Ukraine's renewable energy sector. How much might that soften the blow for Ukraine if it was to lose those transit fees from Russia in 3 years' time?
Well, to some extent, most likely, yes, but there's also other problems, not just simply money. There's not just the fees, there's the gas that goes through Ukraine. Basically, also Ukraine buys part of that gas back. Legally speaking, it buys it from, I don't know, Poland or Slovakia. But physically, the gas is just simply taken from the pipe as it goes through Ukraine. And if the pipe is not functioning, the gas is not coming, where will Ukraine get the gas that it's right now buying in the West? If there's technicalities there that could have a very disastrous effect. It was said already that the pressure in the gas entire system of Ukraine may begin to fall, and that would be catastrophic. Getting gas from the West, they have to reverse it. I mean, there's so many problems there. Okay. Just $1 billion to improve green energy won't. It's good, but it won't solve those problems, I'm afraid.
Okay, I just want to put what's probably going to be the final question in the minute or so that we've got left to Michael. How do you see this playing out? If I mean, Merkel has said that they could apply more sanctions on Russia if it doesn't play ball, but Russia's already been sanctioned almost to the limit already. So, I mean, how much more sort of firepower do they have, really?
Exactly. How much more pain can you inflict on Russia, which is already sanctioned to the hilt, as you already pointed out? I think the only thing the West really has, the only leverage, is the nuclear option, which I call it, and that is to at least temporarily remove Russia from the international financial system, the SWIFT payment system. That would really get them where it hurts. I can tell you that, again, just coming from the region, Vladimir Putin is making very threatening signals. He did a long tone-deaf speech recently claiming that Ukrainians and Russians are all the same people. To me, this is code for we have more ambitions for Ukraine. Get ready for it. Get ready for more aggression. And quickly, don't forget that they did leave a lot of military hardware, a lot of manpower close by when they did their recent military exercises. So again, plenty of reason for Ukraine to feel very vulnerable right now.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Thank you to all three of you, Pavel Felgehhauer, Michael Bociurkiw, and Thornike Gordadze. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story. And thank you, as always, for watching. Remember, you can see this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hazem Sika, and the entire team here, bye for now.